Good evening. So we start with short meditation, watching on the breath. As you've already done, breathe out, breathe in, and let your mind watch that breath. So that breathing going out and coming in should be counted as one. Okay? And then 2, then 3, then 4, and then 5. So we should do this for around for 5 countings probably. Okay? So your hands should be like this. Your shoulders should be straight, not lopsided. Because I will explain this later on also, but with the legs, it should be cross-legged. Okay? Then hand, the right on the left, forming a triangle, put it at the level of your navel. And then the waist, it should not be like this. And then the teeth, then the lips, and the palate. In the case of these 3, let your tongue touch the palate gently, not pushing, but gently let the tongue touch the palate so that you don't feel thirsty, or it will help you not to let your saliva fall from your mouth if you do a little bit longer meditation. Then your head should be slightly bent, your chin a little bit tucked inside, but don't force, a little bit tucked inside. And then, as I said, the shoulders should be straight. It is said that if it is a little bit towards the left, it will induce attachment. A little bit on the right, it will induce anger and hatred. A little bit backward, arrogance and pride. You know, that's what proud people, they go like this, head in the sky, you know. What? Okay. So it induces arrogance. And too much forward induces sleepiness, ignorance. So that's why the shoulders should be straight, and your head and neck should also be straight, and then the chin a little bit tucked inside. And then let your eye fall naturally towards the tip of the nose. Don't strain your nose trying to see the nose. As His Holiness Dalai Lama sometimes jokingly tells people that if you do that, then if you have a small flat nose, then there will be a lot of difficulty, you see. So just let it naturally fall towards the nose. For example, if we throw a stone or something, so that it goes straight towards the side of the navel. Okay? And then, as I said yesterday, the purpose of sitting like this is to straighten your back, but in such a way that you are still relaxed and you are not rigid. You are still relaxed, everything is relaxed, but straight. Okay? So let us start the breathing exercise. When you breathe out, don't try to breathe out forcibly or breathe in forcibly, or don't try to breathe making noise. Sometimes we say, not like that, you know. Gently, normally, as you normally breathe, and just watch that breathing. So that is the process. This is something that you need to do normally. Now, what is important is when you do this kind of meditation, you should see and observe yourself what is happening. What did you notice when you did this meditation? Did you notice something which you normally do not notice? Did you notice something which you normally don't notice? You will find that you become more sensitive to the sounds outside, to some of the irritations and pains in your body. You become very sensitive to these things, you see. So that's the purpose. That's the purpose. So you can easily withdraw many of the distractions. Like we are supposed to focus and meditate one point on that breath, but how many times this is interrupted when you hear the sound of the dog barking, you see. Immediately the mind goes there. So the mind is like fluctuating all the time. That's why we call it monkey mind, you know. Very difficult to concentrate. So it takes time. For your meditation, you can basically choose any object, a flower, a pot, photo of His Holiness, image of Buddha. You can choose anything. But the important thing is to make sure that your mind is staying on the object. And you will find that mind is getting distracted all the time here and there, you see. So it is because of this distraction when we study something we are not able to learn. When we write something we are not able to write it properly. Because you get distracted and suddenly you make a mistake in the spelling or whatever. So therefore, whatever you are doing, enjoy that. Concentrating means enjoying that. It's not just forcing your mind. And it shows when you are not able to concentrate, it's really saying that you are not enjoying. You see, when you enjoy something, your mind just naturally goes into it. So one of the most important thing in this kind of spiritual practice and meditation is you need to enjoy. And how can you enjoy? You can enjoy through many reasons. One, with the understanding that I'm very lucky. The dogs and other animals, they can't do this kind of practice, this kind of meditation. Even among human beings, majority don't have interest or don't have time to do this kind of meditation. And you have this opportunity. So you're lucky, I must do it. And in many places there are people who are interested, but there are no teachers available. You see? No supporters. Okay? And then also, if you look at the fact that the thing that we are pursuing is long-lasting peace and happiness, as we were saying. And I had said that the long-lasting peace and happiness has to be obtained from within your mind. Now this can be understood by doing this kind of meditation, sitting alone and doing this meditation. The calmness that you get, I cannot say uncontaminated calmness at this stage, but the calmness that you get, you cannot get that kind of calmness by watching a movie, or by talking to a friend, or by going for a shopping, things like that, you see. So not only meditation, but learn to sit quietly without saying much. So sometimes it is important to take some time without talking, just sitting and reflecting the meaning of human life. What's the best thing that I can do? How lucky I am. I'm healthy, I'm a human being. Appreciate those things. And sit quiet and calm, And that calmness, that peace that you get through internal reflection, you cannot get it from anywhere. You will understand that, because when you focus within yourself, especially focus on your own mind, it is like focusing on the whole space in the universe. Space is limitless. There's no restriction. There's no constriction. So likewise, when you meditate on the nature of your mind, you don't feel suffocated. You don't feel restricted. You don't feel constricted. When you focus on an object like this, this object, this book itself is an object, number one. It has limitation. So your mind also get obstructed there, you see. The mind also get limited. But when you meditate on ultimate nature of shunyata, emptiness, or the nature of the mind, it's like meditating on the space. So much room there. So much space there, you see. It's because of that you get that immense peace within yourself. So that you will understand only if you meditate. So occasionally, you don't have to call it a big retreat or anything like that. Don't make a big issue out of it. But start doing a little bit every morning. Take 5 minutes after getting up. After getting up, sit down a little bit before you wash your face. Sit upright and think, I'm lucky. I'm able to get up. I'm lucky. You can't take it for granted. You see? You can't take it for granted because the distance or the demarcation between life and death is just this breathing. If you breathe out and could not breathe in, that is called death. That's called future life. It's not a long journey that you have to make by, buying an expensive air ticket or things like that. Midan roshin jursam ukchigin dolo. Midan roshin jursam. The demarcation between a living human being and a dead person is only this process of breathing. Midan roshin jursam ukchigin dolo. Isik, do you see that? Isik, shambacheve lusim jitusu. Even in the case of young people, generally we think the elderly person will die first and the younger ones will die later. There's a little bit of truth there, but no certainty. Some die just in the womb. Some just die when they are able to crawl, you see. So therefore, when you get up, you should not take it for granted. You should say, amazing, wonderful, another wonderful day. I'm still alive, breathing. And what is the purpose of this breathing? Another day of eating and going to the toilet. Is that the purpose? For living, for survival, we have to do that. But is that the main purpose? Or to cheat somebody, to bully somebody, is that the purpose of your life, your breathing? In the 400 verses by Aryadeva, it says that the Buddhas, even their breathing is for other people. Even their breathing is for the benefit of other sentient beings. You see? So that means this breathing itself, the purpose of this life itself, is for others. For others means your own purpose. Because the greatest, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, if you want to be selfish, be wisely selfish. The wise way of being selfish is that the more you help others, benefit others, the more you will be benefited. This law of nature. The more you trick others, cheat others, bully others, the more you will get that result, you see. So without asking much from others, without expecting much from others, whenever there is a possibility, based on your limited capacity, try to be nice, try to benefit others. It's not the case that you will just in one day, become perfect and not get angry, have no attachment, no hatred, boom, enlightenment. No, that's not possible, of course. But at least you make it a point to try your best to help maximize the peace and happiness of others and try to minimize the sufferings of others. Then your visit on this planet is meaningful. Then your practice of Buddhism is meaningful. Otherwise, just breathing. Ngantu pepanal ina di kumo sejo hakura kumo me pare jo biba sigro samza odi chikba res lavre uktaya dila yores ukdua dina hire se lavdo ba beja chinal. Like sometimes I think that when I'm gone, what is it that I'm going to leave behind? If you ask the same question to a family, they'll say, my children. Leaving children behind itself is not your achievement. But leaving your children in such a way that they continue to do the good things for many others, which is your wish, then you are leaving a wonderful legacy. So similarly, whether you are a lay person or an ordained person, what is really important is to do something, not just for your name and fame, but do something that even when you are gone, people will enjoy the fruit of the good things that you have done. And if you are able to do that, then you can die very peacefully. For example, even if you plant a nice shady tree, even when you are sick and lying on your deathbed, still you can think, I planted that nice tree with a nice shade. So I'm sure many people are sitting under it and enjoying the peace of that shade. You can derive that peace and benefit from such kind of activities, you see. So those kind of legacy we need to leave for the future generation. And it's absolutely wrong to think that I need to do everything just for myself and forget about others, you know. It's their responsibility, not my responsibility. I can't do anything for all of this. Yes, you can't do everything for everybody, but you can do something for some people, you see. That's important. Then you are making your life meaningful. Otherwise, eating and going to the toilet and sleeping, and then next morning again getting and eating, with so much capacity. If you don't have the capacity, if you don't have the intelligence, then it's a different thing, like the animals, you know. There's not much they can do. But we have the capacity. So to neglect this potential, to neglect this capacity, is a great waste. Great waste. So that's why I constantly tell my Tibetan friends, younger generation, that it's not enough to make some slogans against the wrongdoings of the Chinese, saying that we have no freedom to preserve Tibetan culture and religion in Tibet. Chinese go back from Tibet. I mean, we have the right to make that slogan. But are you seriously concerned about preserving Tibetan culture and religion? And with that, are you making that slogan? If that is the case, then why are you not doing this here when you have the freedom? So it's a kind of hypocrisy, you see. It's not only a trouble or problem with Tibetans, it's a human problem, you see. Not doing what you can do, and pretending that if you get such and such opportunity, you will, you know, bring down the whole mountain on the plain or whatever, you see. It's a human problem, you see. So this kind of small things, but very important things, you need to repeatedly focus and do your homework. Then you can see the benefit, be it for preserving Tibetan culture, be it for preserving Tibetan religion, be it for benefiting many other people. You will achieve something. If you start doing, stop talking, start walking. Walk the talk, as we say. And sometimes I jokingly tell people that as far as talking is concerned, not much talking is needed. Yes, we do need talking, but not much. If we need so much talking, then we should have given 2 mouths. But we got only 1 mouth. So the nature says, see more, 2 eyes. Hear more from all directions. Not just go after gossip. You should yourself hear the news, first-hand news. You should see the news by yourself and then talk about it. Not simply what you have heard from some other people or, you know, particularly gossiping. And as much as possible, talk less, especially useless things. So if we look at our own human psychophysical makeup, all these lessons are there. And His Holiness Dalai Lama and many great thinkers, they say, if you look at your human body, if you look at these 2 hands, you know, long arms, nice fingers, good for hugging, not for hitting. If it is meant for hitting, then right from the beginning, we should have given just 1 lump, like iron ball, without the finger, so that we can hit much better, you see. Then teeth also good for smiling, you see. Eye also good for showing love and affection, not so good for showing anger. Because normally most of the eyes don't look like the eyes of a snake, you see. Because when you get angry, your eyes also become a little bit like snake, you know, roundish. So if you look at the nature, you see, then the nails, teeth, although we eat meat, but these are basically, you know, we are more like, less like carnivorous animals. Because if we use these nails to kill animal, like the tigers, we will fail miserably. Similarly, if you use your teeth to kill animals, you will fail miserably. All your teeth will fall out, you see. So it's only this intelligence by which we are trying to control the whole world. So what I'm trying to see is that, therefore, the greatest potential that we have is the human mind. Now this human mind has so much power. It is the nuclear bomb. Do you know how nuclear bomb is invented? It is invented from a very small particle, which is the nucleus of the atom. Very tiny, small particle from which is the word nuclear bomb comes from that particle which comes from the nucleus of that atom. So when you know how to handle these things, when you know how to discover those hidden power, you can just create a powerful explosion which can destroy so many things. So similarly, the mind has even, I believe that the mind has even much more powerful potential than those atoms. You see? So therefore, the important thing is to use this human mental potential and direct it towards doing good things. Make effort in that direction, and all of us can create miracles. We all have the capacity to do those things. If we simply recognize it and start doing, not just talking and sitting, but start doing, we can achieve those miracles. After all, everything that we experience, everything that we see is projection of your mind. You see? So to a great extent, the so-called happiness and peace is also projection of your mind. The so-called suffering and trouble is also a projection of your mind. So once you are able to see everything in the right perspective, develop a mind which sees the reality as it is, and do not let the mind run after the fleeting objects, you will not be influenced by the changing situations and events, and your mind will not fluctuate. It will be stable. That means when you train your mind properly, then you will get such a power that if you place your mind on an object, it will stay there. Like a very obedient servant, it will stay there, remain on that object just like a mountain, it will not move. And if you let the mind go to different directions, okay, focus on this, focus on love, focus on compassion, focus on patience, it will say, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. It will become serviceable. So now you can see, that's what I'm saying, you can achieve miracles. You are then the master of the mind. Then you are controlling the mind, not the mind controlling you. So you can see the possibilities there. Okay? So that's how we can bring long-lasting peace and happiness. And when should we do that practice? Seni yundong shije namba mang se jang chisa mi hiwe ngangbe chule oma lemba tar rang deba thangwe langwarja. Seni yundong shije namba mang. Life is short. Seni yundong shije namba mang. There are so many things to know. Is it important for you to know everything on this earth? Is it important? Number one, unfortunately, it's not possible for you to know everything. Number two, it is not important for you to know everything. But there are certain things that you must know. So by this teaching, it is saying that life is short, there are too many things to know. You do not know the span of your life. Just as the swans extract milk from water, similarly you take those things which is really necessary and discard all those other things which is not necessary. So that is to say, don't let your mind distracted for meaningless, useless things, Sometimes we spend hours talking on nothing, useless things. He went south, he went north, rain came, and occasionally, of course, you need to do this kind of conversation, but it is not healthy thing to just spend hours talking about useless things, That's why the mantras, repetitions of mantras are encouraged by the great teachers. So that instead of wasting your time gossiping, engaging in idle chatter, recite mantra. And while reciting mantra, focusing on the meaning of the mantra. There is also meditation on mantra. Okay? And then with your hand also, you see, do something that is creative, that is interesting. So many things we can do, And most of us are, in a way, we are very greedy people. In a way, we are so easily satisfied. You get a small job, you get married, then you are satisfied. You think that's the end of the story, You don't make an attempt to go a little bit forward. That's the problem, you see. You should always make effort to slowly become better and better, more and more knowledgeable, more and more kind, more and more compassionate. For that you need to make some effort. Read the spiritual holy books. Or do something creative. Try to create a mandala. Why not? Try to write a small interesting story. Why not? But we don't do. Oh, I don't know. Right from the beginning you say, when you don't want to do something, right from the beginning you shut the door and say, no, I don't know. Nobody knows anything right from the beginning. It's by making an attempt that you know so many things. So what I'm trying to say is, don't just sit there idle, all the time. Do something productive, creative. And that will also, to be honest, that will also give you job if you don't have an employment. Many of us don't make any personal effort and initiative saying, oh, I went to Shri Legong, didn't get a job. I went to Penjol Legong, didn't get a job. I know. How anybody can give you a job when you don't have that needed qualification, creativity and so forth. And I've seen few people who just work hard, whether it's repairing computer or something, then they become expert in that. Then the friends also say, my computer, something is wrong with my computer, can you please repair it? He repairs it. And then the word spreads around. Sirin can do, Tandu can do, go to him. Then he becomes so popular that he gets employment. You see. So there are so many areas, you need to be a little bit inventive and do those things. And that is meditation. I'm not trying to, purpose of my giving teaching is not to give employment. But that's important, even in terms of employment. Meditate, do something, create something new, which nobody has done. Everybody can do something new. Do you know how the so-called great physicists, scientists in physics, how do they become great physicists? They are not different from us. They are trained slightly in a different way. For example, when the rain comes down, they also see the rain coming down. We also see the rain coming down. The only difference is they start questioning. How did it come down? From what height? From what kind of cloud? They study this and then they become expert on it. Then they say, oh, he's a great physicist, you see. So we all can do that. Ask these questions whenever you see something. Don't just accept it or don't just, leave it there without any question. Ask question, try to know more, and that will be so enriching. Not only in terms of gaining knowledge, but also in terms of enriching your life to make yourself a very, very resourceful person. See? So that is what meditation is about, analytical meditation, analyze everything. Meditation means one of the most important purposes of meditation is to develop this awareness. Awareness. If you look at this, the epithet of the name Buddha, Buddha. In English we say Buddha, but the actual Hindi or Sanskrit word is Buddha. Buddha means somebody who is fully awake. Fully awake. And which has the implication the rest of us are not fully awake, or rather sleeping in ignorance. So Buddha being fully awake means His mind is attuned to everything. He's observing everything. What's happening? Why this is happening? That's what Buddha did. There's the suffering. From where the suffering came from? People want happiness. From where the happiness will come? That's called Four Noble Truth. You see? So we should all develop that kind of curiosity, awareness. When you have that awareness, you will enjoy your life so much. What is this? You ask this question, then you know the answer. So much satisfaction, you see. So much knowledge. Look at the small child. They have that awareness. Just throw a small toy in front of them. The small toy may not cost anything, it may not be something very, big thing. But because they have this very fresh mind. So they'll spend a lot of time, looking at that toy, playing with it, enjoying, laughing, you see. They have this awareness, inquisitiveness, the wish to know. As we grow up, we become more insensitive, Whatever is thrown, whatever is given to you. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. This is for you, very nice coat for you. Thank you very much. Not much appreciation, not much awareness, you see. We are not able to enjoy the beauty of the flower, beauty of the sun, We take it for granted, you see. His Holiness is a wonderful example. You see. He's now 80 years old. Of course he is different from us, but he is showing the path to us. An 80 years old man, so fresh, so alert, so aware, you see. Many a time, because I had this privilege of working with him, many a times when people come to interview him, and they're setting their, camera, His Holiness will be the first person to see, oh, your light is not on. Oh, the lid of the camera is not open. The one who is handling that is forgetting that. His Holiness is able to observe everything, how he is doing, what he is doing, So that kind of awareness must be there. If you don't have that awareness here, then you're a little bit towards death, Awareness. Then you enjoy life, just as the small kids enjoy life. Okay? So meditation makes your mind fresh, alert, aware. But if it will not come in one day, you need to do this regularly. Make it as a habit. As I've already defined the meaning of meditation as getting habituated with the positive emotions. And when you get habituated, then your mind becomes serviceable to the positive practices, and also it remains fresh, alert. Okay? If you do the wrong meditation, the more you do the meditation, the more your mind will become dull. So tomorrow or day after tomorrow I'll teach you a little bit about how to do that. So now since we are here talking about the Buddhist meditation, and yesterday I briefly touched about how to do the meditation during the actual session and during the post-meditative session. Now for the actual meditative session, again there is a preparation that you have to make, then there is actual meditation, then there is the conclusion of the meditation. Now with regard to the actual meditation, you should, I will not be able to explain everything, but you should do what is known as the 6 preparatory practices. Jorchutu. Jorwa means preparation. For your meditation, there are 6 preparations that you need to do. Jorbechutu. 6 preparatory practices. Jorchutu. Now this practice is said to have started by the great teacher Selingba Suwandipa, who was a great teacher of Atisha. So out of these 6 preparatory practices, the first practice is cleaning the place where you are going to do the meditation. Cleaning the place, see? So for a practitioner, whether it is the home where you are living, especially the place where you are going to do the meditation, or the place where you have your shrine, that place must be kept neat and clean. Okay? And there is a, Swandipa said this because there is a quotation in the sutra taught by Buddha himself where Buddha says that the Bodhisattva should choose a clean place and there sit in a cross-legged posture. Should choose a clean place. And in the sutra it talks about 5 benefits of cleaning the place where you are going to do meditation. The 5 benefits are, your mind will become clear. Like when you go to Delhi or some other polluted places, your mind also becomes dull. We may not notice it much because we normally live in polluted areas or our mind is polluted. But those meditators who sit high in the mountain, even when they come down to Meghalorganj, they feel that their mind becomes dull, unclear. You see. So therefore it is important to clean the surrounding. I mean, from the scientific point of view, to remove viruses, bacteria and things like that. That is of course there. So your mind will be clear. Okay? Number 1. Number 2, the mind of other people who will visit this place where you are doing meditation, their mind will also become clear. Their mind also will become clear. Around the library we have been trying our best to make it a little bit clean by planting small flowers. I mean, it's not a big successful story, but still we are trying to clean it a little bit, starting the 8 stupas, planting the flowers. Because of this understanding I've been doing this. It's a way of collecting merit. It's a part of Buddhist practice. It's a way of making other people who visit this place happy. Then third, the celestial beings, the gods, they will also be happy. Those who engage in good practices, virtuous practices, are not only human beings. There are other positive forces, celestial beings. So it is said that many of these celestial beings, like the beings from the Devaloka, they lead a very clean life. And they will not like visiting dirty places. If you are a meditator, naturally you will be inviting Buddha, Bodhisattva and so forth. So how can you invite Buddha and Bodhisattvas in a filthy place? Smelly place? You can't. So when the place is clean, there is more likelihood of the celestial beings and the supporters of your good practices in the form of spirit, whatever, there is more likelihood of their visiting your place and encouraging and giving blessing and so forth. And keeping the surrounding or your body, other things clean is also said to be a cause to be reborn as a beautiful human being. Beautiful women, handsome man. One cause. It is one cause. And then after you leave this place, when you die, you will be also born in those kind of pure realms, celestial realms. There is also a story of Phakpa Lamchung. So this is a long story, but to make that long story short, Phakpa Lamchung was a person whose mind was so dull that he cannot memorize 2 words. If you teach 2 words to him, if you ask him to memorize Om Ah, when he says Om, he will forget Ah. When he's asked to remember Ah, he will forget Om. So it was impossible. His brother tried to teach him, and many others tried to teach him, could not. So finally, the Buddha asked him to clean the shoes of the monks and made some improvement. Then he asked him to clean the temple, the campus of the temple, monasteries, by saying, Duyupango, Timapango. Duyupango means, I'm removing the dust, I'm removing the defilement. He just said that. So he just kept on saying, Duyupango, Timapango, Duyupango, Timapango. Because of that, so much purification took place in his mind, He suddenly, out of the blue, he started making meaning out of it. He said, oh, the Buddha asked me to remove the dust, but the dust is not the ordinary dust. The dust is the dust of negative emotions. The dust is the dust of attachment. The dust is the dust of hatred. The dust is the dust of anger and so forth. So he was able to focus on removing the negative emotions. And he became an Arya, a superior being. And then later on, he also became a very skillful teacher. And he was asked to teach a nunnery. Because it was very well known that Phakpa Lamchungpa is a very stupid fellow. Then he was asked to teach the nunnery. The nunnery said, oh, this is again bullying the nuns, you see. How can we learn from this stupid fellow, you see? But somehow to make fun of him, they said, okay, come, if you can teach, come. So the one verse that he learned earlier from his brother, he explained this for weeks. And everybody was like completely enamored. You see? So purification, you see. So those people, those of us who don't know, then, for example, if you are somebody whose duty is to clean this, I mean, he will always be like, again I have to remove this, again I have to. You see? So while you do your duty, earn your salary, if you have this kind of motivation, you see, you get bonus. You get great many benefits. You get your salary, of course. People will appreciate, oh, library is so clean, because of this man, who is cleaning. And then you offer this clean surrounding to the visiting of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and so forth. I mean, the whole practice is there. So therefore it is important to know all these things. So that is the first out of the 6 preparatory practices. In the first preparatory practices, the first one is clean the place where you are going to do the meditation, and then arrange the altar. In front of you, you arrange a small altar. It doesn't have to be very elaborate, but you must make sure that there's image of the Buddha. The representations of Buddha's body, speech and mind, 3 things must be there. So for representing Buddha's body, there should be a Buddha's image. Then to represent his speech, there should be a text, if possible. Many of the Tibetans, especially in settlements, they have Jetung, they have Bum in all the settlements. Most of the homes have it. Now, in the case of younger generation, I doubt they have any idea about these things. So this is something that you must restore, you must start doing, you see. Bum, Jetung, or at least Shiram Nyingbo, Heart Sutra, or Dodyuba. Give one text like that. Then a small stupa to represent his mind. These 3 things must be there. And on top of that, if you want some other images like Nagarjuna and Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri, it's fine. But the most important is the Buddha. Okay? And it is not necessary that you have too many things which you are not able to look after and handle, but keep few things and keep it clean. And having arranged that altar, not only when you do the meditation, you are encouraged to, in a day, sometimes you feel like going to the temple, you see. But this altar that you have inside you, it is there in your room, but sometimes people don't look at it. It's there, okay. My images are there. So it is said that you should occasionally, intentionally go a few steps, go there and pray, just like visiting the temple. In the temple also you will see the images and scriptures, nothing much. You see? So in this way your mind will get habituated with the practices of meeting the Buddhas, the holy scriptures and so forth. So don't ignore them and keep them clean. And then do 3 prostrations in the morning. Then in the evening before sleeping also at least 3 prostrations. Pick it as a habit. Then occasionally if you are able to do more, do more. It's not only good for spiritual practice, but it's also good for your health. A wonderful exercise. Again, you will get bonus here, you see. Double benefit. So there are wonderful ways of doing it. Kusung tu ji ten dam. Nekang chi do chela kusung tu ji ten dam. Okay? Clear. Second preparatory practice is, in front of those images, arrange the offerings. Arrange the offerings beautifully. Arrange the offerings. Chopa yo meching kopa zebrasham. Arrange the offerings which you have obtained without deceitful means. Chopa yo meba. Yo meba means if you are making an offering, but that offering is something that you have obtained through cheating others, deceiving others. Don't make offering of those things. It's better not to offer them. Yo meba. Yo meba. Yo, there are two types. One is the material, whether it's a butter or biscuit or any food offering that you are making. If you have obtained that through wrong ways, wrong means, then that is gyugoni yo, in terms of the material substances. It is something that is deceitful. Second is kulungi goni yo, that means deceitfulness in terms of your motivation. Okay? So in the case of the first one, the material offerings, which is obtained through deceitful means, for example, if you are a businessman, if you are a layperson, then when you do the business, if you do the scale wrong, you see, if you tell a lot of lies, and in this way you cheat the buyers, then that's deceitful means. I've seen people who do that and then they become sponsors of a big teaching, you see. So that's not healthy. In the case of the monks, monastics, the things that you've obtained through five kinds of wrong livelihood. 5 kinds of wrong livelihood. 5 kinds of wrong livelihood means, first is flattery. If a monk has obtained something, or even in the case of layperson, if you obtain something from somebody by flattering, oh, how nice you look these days, wow, you made great progress, wonderful, you say many nice things to get something from that person. So whatever you've obtained in this way, that is the deceitful ways of earning things. Kasa siddhu khathitri chene se. Ta pele thamne khathitri chene chu yakwa shiu do things amo yagala siga chene chigragai rewa chene rwa kasa se. Then second is called sholung. That means side begging. Literally translated, it's called side begging. Sholung. Sholung means to say, I have butter these days, but I don't have grain. I have butter, but I don't have zamba, So implying that you need zamba, you see. So that's kind of side begging, So that is also, or you can say that the zamba that you gave me last year was so useful, so beneficial, So you are saying that this year also you want something, you see. So that's called sholung, hyola longwa. Or sometimes you if you have a benefactor or sponsor, then with the wrong motivation you go to see that benefactor and sponsor by giving a thermos of tea. Par chungchung jite su chembo rai rewa jamne. Da dila kharse wasana ta chakju tang hyo da sigrese. Bebe ge gemba mangu dila bu yasara chakju ina chik tang hyo sigrese. Da rewa desyo da chakju tang hyo da. Da di chakju di yagat mare. Don't do that, So sometimes the Tibetans, they also say that when you give something small, try to get big one, then say, okay, now I hooked him. You see? I hope I will get something, you see? So these are wrong. Okay? Sholung. The third is nyepe nyepa solwa. Finding material goods by giving material goods. Oh, sorry. This is far chunjung tang the suchembora this goes nyepe nyepa solwa. Okay. Sholung sidu ngala maryu drume sero rwa samba shindu phembo chung sero rwa nyepe nyepa solva finding material goods by giving material good means you give small material things in order to get big ones. Then the fourth is thopjin jalwa, taking by force. Taking by force. That means, oh, your watch is so nice, please give it to me. And you may be reluctant, but say, please give it to me, please give it to me, please give it to me. You know, you force so that the other person is compelled to give that thing. So it's taking things by force. Thopjin jalwa. Or, if I send something, okay, can you please offer this to His Holiness since you are going to Dharamsala? Then instead of offering it to His Holiness, you give it to someone else or you use it. That's also taking by force. Rwa? Kharche chungsta? Khasa, shoglung, nyepi nyeba solwa, thopjin jeba hi chungswa. The fourth is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy, probably I am doing a little bit of hypocrisy. Like in your room, you are criminal. You do all the bad things. Then when you come here for the teaching, you sit on the throne, looks very holy, you know. Hypocrisy. In order to get something, you see. You pretend that you are somebody. If somebody says, Geshe-la Abdullah, you must be highly realized, you know, you've been teaching, you know so many things. Then I said, oh, not much, but it really, I'm a little bit different, you know. And then you start saying things to indicate that you are a little bit advanced or you have a little bit clairvoyance and things like that, you know. So hypocrisy, that means pretending to have those qualities which you do not have. That's also very risky, very risky. So things that you obtain through this kind of wrong livelihood, that is earning things through deceitful means, so those kind of material objects you cannot offer. Okay? There's a story of a famous Geshe called Geshe Ben. Geshe Ben was a very good practitioner, so he had a sponsor. Most of the meditators, they sometimes have benefactors, you see. So one morning he was waiting for his benefactor to come. Said, since my benefactor is coming, so I must look nice, you know. So he cleaned the altar and arranged the offerings nicely. Then he sat down. And then when he reflected, he realized, why am I doing this today especially, you see? Because my benefactor is coming. This is not what I do always. So he got up, took one handful of dust and threw it on the altar. You see? And later on, when other great teachers heard it, then they said, this is the greatest offering. You see? Because he realized that he is not making a sincere offering, but he is doing this to please his benefactor. So that's the meaning of hypocrisy. That in your private life you do all kind of bad things, but in front of other people you look nice, disciplined, you know. And then also when it comes to making offerings, burning a butter lamp or offering the water balls and so forth, you need to do it. You should not say, oh, make this offering. It's like saying, oh, eat for me, you know. If you let others do it, the one who do it will earn the merit, not you. You have to practice it, whether it's making some offering or giving something to others. And in terms of the materials that you offer, you should try offer those things which is of good quality, not those things which you cannot eat. So say ne shimbo mezan ya yar dikhyara che. The Susulaya Marka Sawadin Moto Mena Yan degrees. Marka Sawajimoto Mena degrees. Kansana Pena Chumeda Piva in Marka Sawajimoto Mena degrees. Then Dige Karesena. chumi pidu chumi ki wödi pigyo mardo mar pigyo mare. Chumi ki wödi pigyo re. But the butter you have is a little bit, what should I say? Not stale, maybe stale, yeah. That's what you have. Then don't worry. Because when you are making the offering, what you are offering is the light, not the butter itself. Okay? Otherwise, you should, whatever offering you make, you should offer from the best part, not those which you don't like to use. Okay? Then with regard to making the Yuncha Pida, I'm sure you know, take 7 balls, okay? And then clean 7 balls. And then the last one, the one on the top, you should put some water there. And then that water should be put into all other, put one there, little bit water like that. So it said that don't keep that ball empty for a long time, which is not a good sign. So for that purpose. And then while you are offering, you should recite this mantra, Om Ahung, Om Ahung, Om Ahung, Om Ahung, Om Ahung. Okay? Om Ahung is basically blessing body, speech and mind. It's a very beautiful form of blessing everything. Om Ahung, Om Ahung. And since when you make the butter lamb offering, and also with the water ball offering, the distance between each of the ball is such that you can put just 1 grain. Duchik shung such tapa. Katede didn't remember, yan jarde jo didn't remember, the deal yakuyomadas. So the space should be equal. That's the meaning of arranging the offerings beautifully. Or if you don't understand this, then you should imagine that you have invited His Holiness. Okay, His Holiness is sitting here. Then how are you going to make the offerings? How are you going to offer the tea? If you are to put a cup of tea in front of His Holiness, how are you going to put it? You will not put so much tea that it will overflow the cup. Chikmarwa. And you will also not put too little. So the process of doing that is when you start pouring, pour slowly. So the very tiny, slender kind of flow will be there. Then a little bit more thick. Then when you're about to stop again, slowly, make it tiny, slender. So imagine that the Buddha and Bodhisattvas are there. Then you will do things perfectly by yourself. And then with regard to offering the butter lamb, what you're offering is the light. Okay? So therefore you should prepare a butter lamb which will last long and give good light. If you prepare a butter lamb which will last long, that also has the auspicious causal collection of living a longer life. Just like giving the light, there is also possibilities of getting the light of wisdom. So with these purposes you make those offerings. And then third preparatory practice is that you should choose a comfortable seat where you are going to sit for your meditation. A comfortable seat means that the rear side, the back side of the seat should be a little bit higher than the front side. Otherwise you feel like this, then you immediately get pain here. If the rear side is lower than the front side, then you will feel like this and you will get pain here. So the rear side, the back side is a little bit higher. Then you can sit there for a much longer time. Okay. And then you observe the postures which I've already explained. The postures are called 7 or 8 Vairochana postures. 7 or 8. 7 or 8 means when you count the 7 I've already explained to you, and in addition to that you put the breathing, then that becomes 8. 8 Vairochana postures. So 8 postures are the postures of your legs, I've explained, your hand, your waist, and then the teeth, lips and the tongue. These three are counted as one, so that makes it four for this one. Then your head, then your eyes, I've explained, then your shoulders, then you add the breathing, that makes it 8. Okay? So sit comfortably, straight, on a comfortable seat, with full cross-legged or half cross-legged posture. That's the physical contact. And then you should do the practice of taking refuge and cultivation of bodhicitta. Okay? Tadi Shivadire. Taking refuge and cultivation of bodhicitta. Kyam do Hagurawa? Taking refuge. Taking refuge. Taking refuge means when Tibetans left their country, came to India, then we took refuge to the Indians, the Indian government. Meaning that when you are unable to look after yourself in certain aspects, you seek the support of somebody, you are taking refuge there. Exactly like 12 o'clock, you take refuge in food. At 12 o'clock, it's lunchtime, you take refuge in food. If it is raining outside, you take refuge under your umbrella. So this taking refuge, this concept is a beautiful concept, but it's not something invented by Buddha, but it's the human ways of doing things. When you want to get yourself protected and you're unable to do it by yourself, you take refuge in someone. So likewise, in this spiritual practice also we take refuge to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. Now this is very crucial and very important as a Buddhist. So as I've given you the indication, when you have a problem, when you have a difficulty which you cannot solve by yourself, then you take refuge in somebody. So here in this case, as a Buddhist, we are taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. Now, that leaves the question, why are you taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha? As I said, you take refuge in something when you have a problem. So here in this case, when you take refuge in Buddha, and Dharma and Sangha, what is your problem? That you need to know. Otherwise, even if you say, I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, doesn't make sense. What is your problem? Shortage of money? No. Or headache? No. Why are you taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha? Huh? Oh yeah, ta? Nangba is love jamru layim. Huh? So why you take refuge in Buddha, Dharma and Sangha? Because you have fear. You have fear. When you have trouble, when you have fear, then you take refuge in somebody. So you take refuge in Buddha, Dharma and Sangha because you have fear. Fear of what? Fear of samsara. Fear of samsara. Yes, the answer is right. But now you honestly think about it. Do you have fear of the samsara? Honestly, do you have fear of the samsara? Kawa. Tanda the first digi chungna samde mado. Korwal hinang kawa, korwa the keep tajo tanda part. Until now, samsara is quite wonderful, amazing, you know. So many of these beautiful gadgets coming, you know, big screen televisions are coming out, you see. So everybody wants to live as long as possible. That is indication that you are enjoying samsara. Forget about having fear and forget about wishing to run away from it, you see. This is very crucial. You have to have the fear. You don't have the fear because you don't recognize your problem. You don't recognize your suffering. You don't recognize the destructiveness of the negative emotions. So therefore you need to sit down and reflect carefully the great damages that can be done by these negative emotions. That how you are cheated and deceived by the superficial glamours of the samsara, the meaningless, the hollow, glamorous life. like a bunch of mad people, you see. I told you yesterday, I visited, I spent some time in that lunatic asylum in Amritsar, where there are hundreds of crazy people, mad people, you see. I spent some time there. When I was in the school, one of the students got mad. So I and another fellow, Sonamang, the two of us were sent down to look after him. So I know what they do, you see. They are mad completely, but many of them are singing, you see. If you ask them to take medicine, they say, no medicine, I am fine, okay. They'll sing and dance, because they don't know they are mad. So we are a bit like that, you see. You don't know how destructive these negative emotions are, how overwhelming these sufferings are. You don't know. So therefore you are happy with these superficial, fleeting pleasures. That's the problem. So that's why we need to pay a little bit more deeper attention, whether you can afford to stay like this or not. It's like a ship that is led towards the butcher. Not knowing that the ship is led towards the butcher, the ship is like enjoying the green grass here and there, But very soon is going to the butcher. So when we don't know these things, then we get attracted to the superficial, fleeting pleasures, you see. So what do you mean by samsara now, therefore? What is samsara? Korva. What do you mean by korva? What do you mean by samsara has been translated as cycle of existence. So where is this cycle of existence? Korva khawayore. Korva khawayore. Khawayore korva. Ngazo mi ma shinki ki gebu gemo khashe so so chimsan de nang de korva chig do. Da yo mari geshila korva nalan juni ta siga chig do nang de korva lag do. Many elderly people, they point towards their family, their home, and they say, oh, this is samsara, Samsara is this psychophysical aggregate that you have is samsara. This psychophysical aggregate that you have, which is projected through contaminated karma and negative emotions, that itself is samsara. Til sigur korva. Ta til khorde gorda. You get attracted to your body, you get attracted to your mind, however polluted, however contaminated, you get attracted to it, and for that you are ready to commit all the sins in the world. Til lu tang mathubne. Ti tondal mi se guchung, chakwa ja guchung. That is samsara. So this existence is not an existence that you can choose freely. You are conditioned by the negative emotions. Despite your wanting to do many great things, you are unable to do. Because you are restricted, constricted by the influence of these negative emotions. The die-hard habits, as I said the other day. You see. So therefore what you need to get rid is the contaminated action, karma, and the negative emotions. Because it is this contaminated karma and negative emotion which keeps you under bondage. Dungengone nyang juge. Rwa. Tanga du terrorist in hiu sigdo thingsa. Terrorist ngone dita suzugi le dang yomo. The real terrorist. These days we talk so much about terrorists. The real terrorist is these negative emotions, these contaminated actions, which destroys your peace, which destroys your freedom, which keeps you under bondage. If you really want independence, if you really want freedom, then first you get freedom from the bondage of these negative emotions. Then wherever you go, you will be happy. If you are unable to get rid of this, go back to Tibet, more or less same. Go to America, first few days, okay, you think it's the land of milk and honey. Everybody is now dying to go to America or Europe. But after a few days, then they will say, oh, it's much better that I have stayed in India. I've seen many people like that. Once I was returning from America, and I was in a transit at German airport. So I met a very interesting Indian. So we started talking in Hindi. He speaks Hindi, I speak Hindi. Then he said, Guruji, then he pointed towards some date and month. उस दिन में, उस महीने में, मेरे जीवन में सबसे बड़ा गलती मैंने किया. On that particular day and month, I made the greatest mistake in my life. Then I said, वो क्या है? मैंने अमेरिका किया. He said, the greatest mistake I made was that on that month and day I went to America. Then I said, why don't you come back to India? Oh, ऐसा मत बोलो गुरुजी, इस तरह इतना बुरी तरह फंस गया कि अब कुछ कर ही नहीं सकता. You see, that's the way, I got stuck there. Now there's no way I can. You see, so people always think the grass is greener on the other side. You see, if your own way of thinking, you see, is not proper, wherever you go, there something is missing, something is lacking. You see, so the real lacking is from within, not from outside. Rangju ji nyomoda lenge bapama ene lu dagara tungchir chi ben jungne jan dins sedwa. If you get rid of these negative emotions and containment actions, this psychophysical aggregate itself is kind of heaven. Itself is called the great city of happiness. So the one that destroys happiness and peace is this negative emotions, anger, jealousy, hatred, short-sightedness. So in Buddhism, that's what we are trying to remove. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry. Thank you. Good night.